Welcome, everybody, to the Dr. Leadership Lounge, where we have conversations with business leaders from all walks of life about how and why they are successful. Hey, good day, everybody. Welcome to the Dr. Leadership Lounge. It's been another great week in the books, and I'm very, very blessed today to have someone that has been just wonderful to the local community and expanded community where she lives here. To the show, a young lady by the name of Brenna Finnerty. She is an account executive with PSCU, but has a number of accolades attached to her herself over the last 13, 14 years, where she was heavily involved in healthcare philanthropy and actually a receiver of a 40 under 40 in 2019 by the Association of Healthcare Philanthropy Association, which is a big, big deal, Brenna, and I am so glad that you've joined us today. How are you doing?
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you, Brent. Very happy to be here. And thank you for that very kind introduction.
Yeah, it's great. We spend a lot of time on my weekly podcast talking about leadership concepts in the business world, how to be a better, executive leader, how to be a better team leader, how to be a better individual contributor. And then we try to bring it into the people's personal lives, right? How to be a good leader at home, how to be a good sister, how to be a good mother, how to be a good daughter, how to be a good friend, and then also the community responsibilities that we all have. I talk about the village a lot. And, when you and I got introduced, it was immediate in my mind, man, I'd really like to spend some time with Brenna because your background, not your, as you say, your regular job. I kind of tongue in cheek say that. I laugh too. I say that actually when I'm on the podcast, right? When I'm doing my normal job, I am busy as well. But I really appreciate you coming on because I think all of us, after the last 3 years of COVID, there was a lot of people that got very, not self-centered. That's not the right term, but very sheltered in place, and we got to get this community kind of thriving again, and I think your background has been great to talk about that today. But if we could start, just kind of tell us your background. A Des Moines young lady, went to Waukee High School, I know, and an Iowa State University graduate, but kind of what's that? Go Cyclones! Now you got to watch that. I'm a Hawkeye fan, so I will deal with that professionally today. But actually, I cheer for those Cyclones every game except one a year. In each sport, but it's funny. People that aren't from Iowa, it is as contentious of every other state rivalry that you have out there. But we all get along pretty well when it's not game day. But just kind of walk us through how did Brenna get to here today, and then we'll dive in a little bit deeper on some of the philanthropic things that you've been involved with, as well as your current career around leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is going to seem like I'm going way further back than necessary, but I promise I will come back around to bring
It's all good. Don't worry.
So as you mentioned, I Des Moines native, graduated from Waukee, and actually my senior year at Waukee, they had offered what was then at the time, cutting edge. So I won't date myself with graduation year, but hopefully that's probably enough. And it was a program called School to Work, and you could apply and do kind of a mini internship. So spent half of my school day working. And at that time, I thought it might be interesting to look into the field of real estate. So yep. I worked for Realty. They had an office located in Waukee, and so did that internship there through my senior year. And for college, then they actually paid for me to get my residential license, and I stayed on and interned in the summer as a licensed marketing assistant.
Wonderful.
And then after graduation then from college, went back and actually took a position. It was an internship turned full-time position. So you can imagine just how much it paid.
It was a by the hour one, I bet. Yeah.
Yeah, I was definitely still waiting tables a couple nights a week, that's for sure. So did not give up the part-time job for a while, but worked as an event coordinator, helped do a lot of the incentive travel, continuing education, any of the agent kind of builder opens networking events. And so
Sure.
Did that, transitioned into more of a marketing role. And as part of that, or during that time frame, Iowa Realty became the presenting sponsor. They still are for an event here in Des Moines called the Festival of Trees and Lights that benefits Blank Children's Hospital.
Which is, just for everyone's edification, the Festival of Trees is around the holiday season. And if I describe this wrong, Brenna, get me back on track here. But local businesses and even some families, I think, can do it too. Sponsor a tree and decorate it all out, and then people come in, and I think they bid to actually be able to take those trees home. Right? Isn't that what it was originally?
It's a little different. I
Okay.
said every time people would ask, they said, "What is the Festival of Trees and Lights?" And I'm like, "Well, it's a festival of trees and lights." So, like, it's just nothing. No,
That's exactly
secret.
what it says.
It is. So it's actually kind of two separate events. There is a public event. So like it's a 3-day public event. Just transitioned to that. We get about 20,000 people through that. And then there's also a gala of about 700-ish community members. I believe we are just short of the 40th year. So
Wow.
it's been, to your point, has been a long-standing tradition. And there's actually a few different ways people do support the event. So the trees themselves, we have a lot of volunteers who come in and decorate them.
Gotcha.
And so the volunteers, maybe a lot of them are patient families who have been touched by Blink Children's Hospital. And so we'll typically do it to celebrate or memorialize a loved one. We have groups of friends who have done it. There was a group of women they called themselves the Birthday Club. And that is how they met and how they celebrated each other. They did birthdays.
That's awesome.
They decorated trees for 20 years. So
How
it's
wonderful.
really, it's amazing. They're giving, really their treasure and talent to help support. And then also sponsorship at $1,500 and above includes selection of a tree. And that's based on sponsorship level. So Iowa Realty as a presenting sponsor, for example, would come in and get, selection. There are normally about 75 trees.
Yep.
So they get their first pick and then they would tell us where they want that to go. So
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it could be your corporate office. They could raffle it off for an employee. You can donate it back to a patient at Blink Children's Hospital. You could give it to your brother, sister, whatever it is. We will then physically, and when I say, so I'm still saying we, spoiler alert, I worked at Blink Children's Hospital and helped coordinated festival.
Yes.
Would then hand deliver the tree when the event's over. So it's really kind of neat just to see the different, there's a story behind every tree, I always say.
Yeah.
And really neat to see.
And
that.
I want to go back to, kind of your journey here. You're just now doing the Festival of Trees and there's so much more, but Blank Children's Hospital has been very important to my family too. My sister Connie's been very active at the hospital for a long time. My niece, Allison, that's how we got introduced actually. But my personal journey with them was when my oldest daughter was born. She was early, and she had some oxygen issues and had to spend 3 days in the NICU unit at Blank Children's Hospital. And there is not a finer institution anywhere, and that's not a biased opinion. That's known from just the data. We're very, very fortunate in Des Moines with our healthcare system. So great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great location. So please continue. I didn't mean to get us off the rails there.
Absolutely. No, I agree. I always said about Blink and really healthcare in general, you never want to need us, right? Like this is a place you would never want to be, but we're happy we're here when you do.
That's exactly right.
And I really think, to your point, Blink has really taken that quality of care and also kind of the compassion of care to heart and really made that at the forefront of all they do.
Yep, and we're also the home, and sorry, it's a Hawkeye thing, but a home of the wave, the greatest tradition in college football, with the Children's Hospital there in Iowa City, and at the end of first quarter, they give the wave to the kids upstairs, that are watching the game above the stadium, which is just wonderful. Anytime we're helping kids in need, it's just a warm, fuzzy feeling to me anyway. I don't know, it's just, you feel so bad, you trade places with them as a parent, a heartbeat, but like you said, it's something you don't want to have to deal with, but when you do, you're awful doggone glad we got people like you and the doctors and the nurses and everybody that were involved.
Yeah, absolutely. They are incredible. And you're right. As a state, especially a rural state, we are incredibly lucky to have the resources and healthcare centers that we do.
Yeah. So please continue. So you were at Iowa Realty. You got
Yeah.
involved in the festival.
But Iowa Realty, plugging along, and Iowa Realty started sponsoring Festival of Trees and Lights. With that partnership, as part of my role, I helped manage our sponsorship and got to learn a lot more about Flake Children's Hospital and Unity Point Health, and to your point, the difference that they do make, that organization makes in our community. Started volunteering for Festival of Trees as a gala committee member, and then lo and behold, a position opened up as an internal communications coordinator on the Unity Point Health marketing team, and I made that transition over to Unity Point Health in 2009.
Now, which is wonderful. What was the draw there? Because you were going down the real estate road, and did you just have was it a feeling? Was it you just were enjoying the giving to the community so much that it's just like, I really want to dive in here deep? What kind of made that transition come about being for you mentally?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say it's very much the mission, right? Like, yeah. I learned about it and absolutely cared about it enough to start giving of my time. Fell in love with the people, right? Like most of the people who work in healthcare, you're working with incredibly compassionate, caring, intrinsically motivated groups of individuals. And so I always say with every career move, at some point, there's this little voice that says, now it's time.
Yeah.
And I made some significant career moves, or what feels like maybe harder pivots throughout. And every single time, it's just where I feel like and it's time. And then the big question is, what's next? And I think as you continue to search, the opportunity typically will present itself, and you'll be ready.
That's awesome. Even in throughout my career, and it's kind of a good thing to discuss for everybody. You got to kind of listen. Your gut knows you better than anybody else, and when that little voice in your head says it's time, like taking a promotion or moving, away from Unity Point after a very, very long period to the position you're in today, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. It was right for you at that moment. Same thing. I've moved a couple times, 3 times now for my regular job, as we were joking about earlier. And you just know it's right. It's the opportunity. I want to have an opportunity to lead more, have more responsibility, etc. And you did the same thing here, with a much higher calling than mine. Mine was more personal based. Yours was giving of your time, and it's just such a wonderful thing to have people like you out there leading it. Tell me a little bit about how you went about engaging the community, because I think so. I was on a call today, work call, and our chairman was talking about giving and giving back and how you get involved in your community. How did you drive, because you raised a lot of money? I know for the John Stoddard Cancer Institute there, the center. Also, I think you did a large thing for young children around a playground event that I want to, fundraiser as well. I want to kind of talk about that too. But how did you find yourself being successful in engaging the community and turning on the switches for others?
Yeah, that is a great question. I will say, whenever anyone says what interests you, I typically say everything. And I get slightly tongue in cheek, but it's very true. I would say a lot of the time in my 20s, so throughout my early career at Iowa Realty, and then as I transitioned to the role within Unity Point, and really now to this day, have felt incredibly compelled to give back in whatever way I could. In the fundraising world, we say you can give your time, treasure, or talent.
Yep.
I say early on in my 20s, it was a lot more of time, and what I'm hoping was talent.
Talent, yeah.
Yeah, right. A little bit less of the treasure. There was a little bit less to go around. You see that trajectory shift also.
That's right. That's normal in life, right? You don't have retirement money, and you don't have. It's a very natural transition in every career. Your 20s, you're starving, just trying to get started. Your 30s, you're starting to feel good about yourself. Your 40s, you start making some good money, and you can afford some more treasure. And then the later on in life you get, the more you're able to give back financially. So it kind of transitions, right? you dig in the time and you work hard first in giving, as in your day jobs. You got to give a lot of time for not a lot of reward, but that comes with the labor of love, as they say.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a very good analogy. And I mean, clearly you can still give your time today, but I would say, being in Des Moines is a really, really good opportunity to just kind of dive in. It's a community that embraces young professionals in that way.
Yep.
And really, I think the community, to your point, is really, really focused very readily on giving back. So individuals supporting, and I would also say corporations. I think it's small enough that it's a question that's asked when people are interviewing, right? Or talking about different companies. You'll hear them frequently say, "Oh, and I know they give a lot to X, Y, and Z charity, or they give a
Yep.
lot back to the community." And so it's certainly, I would say, elevated from that standpoint. So no, I mean, I joined probably too much, but every board, every volunteer opportunity, every YP, you name it, I could. And I
Young
think what's been,
professional being the YP
yes,
for everybody.
sorry.
No, that's okay. I wanted to make sure I knew what the hell we were talking about.
It's been a minute since I qualified for anything YP, but
Yeah. Well,
yes,
and you got to lean in anything in life, right? I mean, you leaned in. You just said, I'm going to go
yeah,
do this thing. Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah, you have the energy for it. And then I think what's been really neat is I always say when people are looking to give back, whether that is time, treasure, talent, and I know a lot of time now or at certain points in your career means a board position or a committee position,
Right.
is really to pick, what are the top 3 things you care about? Because if you are giving that much of your time, and inevitably it will be, right? Like many of these boards are, I'm going to put air quotes here that you can't see, working boards.
Yep. Yep.
And so it's not going to feel worth it, right? If it's not something that you're truly passionate about. And so I think what's been interesting for me personally is just realizing how those passions or where I've allocated that extra time has shifted as certain roles have changed and shifted.
Sure.
So for example, when I worked in marketing for Unity Point, I was very involved with a few different children's charities here in Des Moines on the boards or, giving back different committees. And then as I moved into fundraising for Blake Children's Hospital
Yep.
and later John Goddard Cancer Center, really shifted and looked at how can I help health and wellness. So I'm currently on the board for the YMCA.
I saw that.
And
I saw that.
yeah, so it can kind of flip, really based on, to your point, what you're doing, quote unquote, in your day job, what skills you have, and maybe what, I guess, personal bucket you're also trying to fill.
Yeah, and I think you raise an important point, and it's a life. It's not just about philanthropic or giving community wise, but it's also work or anything else. I did one of the podcasts here several weeks back now on guardrails, where people just keep coming to you, and if you don't kind of put up I think in one of our conversations a while back, you had trouble saying no, and it's just because you want to help. It's the old Jack or Jane of all trades and master of none. Not meaning you aren't doing it well, but why not pick a couple, 3, and really have an impact versus just skimming the surface in other areas. And I think that's good for anything in life. You can have too many spinning plates, for an analogy, in life, whether it be your business life, your personal life, or whatever, and suddenly you're not doing any of them to a level that would be acceptable if you took a deep breath and kind of self-evaluated. So I think that's a great point on how, pick the few and really lean in. That's great.
Yeah. And I think to your point, just to piggyback on that a little bit, you're not able to excel or give your full self to those positions. And so to your point, and well, but also you're not serving yourself well, which I know, as we're looking again from a work-life balance, again, in air quotes,
Yep.
standpoint, that's, you're really also looking at this is a way, I think, it's cliche, people say it constantly, but you get just as much out of it, right, as you're putting into it.
In, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So making sure that when you're doing something, obviously you're doing it to help others, but it is certainly going to give back to you, and you want to prioritize yourself when you're making those choices as well.
Yeah, it's great. A couple things here that I first of all wanted to comment. You started working young, which was great, and I think that that's something that the community. You leaned into um, that internship. What was it called from high school again? I forgot the name. What
School
they
to work,
uh, what is it?
very quick. School to work.
School to work. Thank you. I couldn't come up with that.
Yes. Yes.
But to lean in early and to build some responsibilities is great. And then to understand yourself also on that work life balance later on. So it's very important for everybody to be very hardworking and get after it and be dedicated, but also for your own well being and your personal health, you got to know when to kind of say, hey, I gotta pass here for a little bit. I've got enough on the plate. So it sounds like did you figure that out pretty quickly, or did it take exhaustion and frustration to get you there?
But I really wish I could say I was one of those people who figured out very quickly because I was so mindful. But the truth is more the latter.
Yep.
I read once quote once that said, like, I don't know, I'm just gonna totally botch it. Like either you stop or pause or your body will for you or something to
Yeah,
that
I know.
effect.
Yeah. One we've used a lot since this COVID world has hit is we used to say I work from home, but if you aren't careful, you can live at work. And
Yeah.
you have to have the ability to separate and segment your life. Like I try to only work in my office in my home. I try not to work in the family room. I try not to work at the kitchen table. I try not to work sitting in bed watching TV at the end of the night to do those things because you'll get into this burnout situation, which working from a philanthropic standpoint, I'm sure can come to you because when you're volunteering, right, it's volunteering and it's nonstop. The hours I can't even imagine that you had to put in on some of these events. Just it's a year of planning, and then it's like a firework going off. It's up and boom, it's over, and then you start planning for the next year. I suppose it was
You know
literally
what?
never ending.
That is very true. I will say the one thing that I have noticed, so as you mentioned, worked for Unity Point for 12 years, started out in PR and marketing, and then transitioned into direct fundraising or donor development. And recently, or within the past year, took a very hard pivot or a 180 into doing account management for a financial services firm.
Yes.
And I will say what's been interesting is I realized how heavily, if I had a bad day, or it was just one of, things are going south, you can't keep up with whatever, I would physically get up from my desk and take a walk around the halls at the hospital. Offices were located I had a variety of offices, but
Right.
kind of off of inpatient wings. And so it was always there. And it was this very tangible reminder of like, just kind of why I was doing what I did, right? Like I never questioned the why. It was certainly an honor to help support those patients, and just a nice level set in the middle of the day to just put things into perspective and then go back to your desk and say, oh, it's just an email, right? Or it's just a call, and would help with that. And now that I work and I have a normal person job and I am also working remotely,
Yes.
from home. And so it is just me in this, room in my house by myself. I have tried to find some different ways to add that perspective in because I realized once it was not there how heavily I was leaning on that throughout the day.
That's awesome to just, kind of look back that way. It is important. And I just want to go just speak on, you were saying, it's just an email, or you'd walk up and separate yourself for a while. I talk to my leaders and people that I work with and are very fortunate to have on my teams around the country. The same thing. It's just not worth having anxiety, stresses, stand up and take a break. Every couple hours, I've talked about before. Now, when you work from home, there's no travel time to the next meeting. There's no open spot on your calendar. Can be what happens is
Mhm.
everyone shoves another WebEx or another Teams meeting or whatever it is, Zoom on your calendar. Hey, there's 15 minutes open. Let's take it. Well, I was going to eat and use the bathroom then, but I guess I'm not doing either of those. It can really catch you. So it's important for everyone that's listening to understand, both in your giving life and your regular business life and your home life, get up and step away. Same thing to new parents. You want to talk about stressful. I can remember when I said my oldest was, up in the NICU for a few days. It wasn't a bad thing. She was out of any trouble very quickly, but they had already put in the feeding tube in the belly, and they just said, let's just keep her here instead. But you go home with that child, and you've never experienced it, and then she got colic. And talk about needing to just walk away and take a walk. Her time at night was 11 p.m. until about 3 a.m. My wife and I at that time were living in my folks' basement. We were building a house. So the crib is at the end of the bed. There was no escape. And you can understand why people can kind of pop. You just got to, they're safe, step up and walk away. The business world, it's just an email. It's going to be okay for 20 minutes while I go clear my head. And people need to be able to reset and take a deep breath and concentrate on their own well-being, because you aren't going to be a benefit to your family, to your business life, or anything if you have a breakdown. You can work yourself into illnesses and just not feeling good and not being able to then perform at the level that you want to give to it. My wife and I were talking about this last night. Some leaders feel that like a sick day shows like a sign of weakness. That's it's not so much any longer, because we've learned in COVID with all the protocols. I hope that adjusts that. But it's so stupid. Hey, the 1970s have called and they'd like their leadership approach back, is what I say to people like that. The last thing you want are unhealthy people coming in and making the rest of your stuff unhealthy. But it puts a wedge in them mentally. They take it. It becomes a tick against you as a leader, because you aren't showing any empathy. There's no empathic approaches to it. You too, someday, you aren't showing that you're strong coming in sick. You're showing that you're irresponsible and not really all that smart. It's not important to give an example of being an idiot. It's important to let people know that let's take care of ourselves and we'll be back at it as soon as you can. I hope you feel better. You show the compassion, etc. So way tangent, but I think it's important to kind of touch on.
Absolutely. And I a couple of thoughts. When I heard myself the other day, to your point with the back-to-back meetings, and again, I work remote, I hopped on 2 minutes late, and I apologized and said, I'm so sorry, I had to get up and get a drink of water. And I was like, I can't believe I just apologized for that. Because the leeway, I said, when in-person meetings, people kind of trickle in, right? You almost like wouldn't start until the 5-minute mark or 5 minutes after.
Yep.
And now it's like, if you are not on 30 seconds after someone starts the Teams meeting or WebEx, you're late. And so you don't get, what I do miss is the ramp up time to kind of get your head in a right spot for a meeting. And then I felt like there was also typically that time to decompress. And digest after, right? Like to actually think through the meeting itself and next steps. And that has been completely lost. So I just, when you were talking, that made me think of it, because I heard myself say it out loud and I'm like, okay, we have a problem. I did
a 2-series podcast 2 weeks in a row about, it was probably an hour and 15 minutes total, on how to lead through this new virtual world, right? This at home, and how you bring your team on. And you talked about the kind of the ramp up period. What I call it is the check up from the neck up. The first 5 minutes, you're going around and making sure, how you doing? You feeling okay? How are the kids? How's the boyfriend? How's the girlfriend? How's the cat? How's the dog? Allow people to kind of filter in. Get that engagement around the human. We're built for relationships. And the relationship I'm talking about isn't boss to subordinate or leader to individual contributor. It's human to human, right? Everything that we desire in our life is based around relationships. And the need for us to have successful interactions with people. And then I talked about at the end, don't schedule meetings for an hour on the nose, schedule them for 50 minutes. The first 5 minutes, check up from the neck up. And if you can't effectively handle something in 30, 40 minutes, the meeting's not being run very well typically. Now, I'm not saying planning the Festival of Trees is done in 30-minute meetings, but these things that are coming at us all the time, every day, people got caught up in the calendars. There were things on my calendar from 18 months ago that had no relevancy any longer. And it's like, why are we still meeting? We don't even need to really cover this anymore. Clean the calendar off and away we go. So I'm glad
Yeah.
I'm not the only one seeing it. I'm glad you're giving me a little bit of
So
validation to it.
the other thing I had heard on a podcast the other day that I felt, I'm sure I've maybe heard it other times, but when the student is willing, the teacher appears,
Oh boy.
was to use rest as a rhythm, not as a refuge.
That's great. I like it.
And I was like, yes, for some that stack. And I think it can apply to throughout the day, those daily pauses. I think it can apply to how we can go really hard during the week and then say, oh, we'll rest on the weekend. I think it can go, I think goals for this year, we were just talking about this as a team, our personal goals. And I was like, I'd love to just have a 3-day weekend on the calendar every month or every other month. And
Absolutely.
whether a staycation or a vacation, like there is forced time off, forced time away, where I'm physically not in this space, and just making sure that that is part of a rhythm and not where it's like, oh my gosh, I can't wait. I'm at the point of burnout. I need 2 weeks off, right? Or something to that point that you're able to just manage things.
Every medical
Yeah.
thing that I've ever read, benefits to your health from enough sleep and rest are critical. It's how do you avoid dementia? For one of them on the list is 8-9 hours of sleep. How do you avoid
Yep.
fatigue? 8 or 9 hours of sleep. How do you avoid anxiety? 8 or 9 hours of sleep. What's better for your heart? Giving it rest at night. REM sleep. What's good for your lower back, your feet, your posture, rest, relaxation, and mentally, you have to do that because there's only so much that the hard drive can handle, and that's what the brain is, right? I mean, and then suddenly the hard drive's overwhelmed, and you get the blue screen of life going on, and you're not doing anything well. You're a grump at home. You're not treating the people on your team as they should be, and the results diminish. So I'm glad that you see it that way too, because it's just so important. Rest is so important, and kind of resetting. So I appreciate that. Who in your life was real inspirational to you? Was there anybody that you looked at growing up and had a big impact on you on how you were going to approach life that you're leading right now?
It's so funny. So, of course, I was trying to think through some questions. There is not an individual that stands out. And I know this one comes up all the time. I really feel like as a, I don't know, quote, lifelong learner, I just think I find a lot of inspiration, or maybe I've been very lucky to be surrounded by, to your point, a lot of great examples.
Yep.
Throughout childhood, different jobs I even had in high school, teachers in school. I've had a variety of leaders at the health system. And I just remember thinking it's kind of how I think I've learned to hopefully lead or exist more authentically, is by realizing skills, talents, or attributes in others that I'm like, yes, that rings true to me. And how can I integrate how they're using that into my own personal practice? And so, at the health system, I'm trying to think specifically, a lot of the inspiration came from our donors, right? Like there were people who were continually utilizing what was arguably the absolute hardest time in their life to
Oh,
make a difference for
yeah.
others,
Yep.
right? So that would be a child going through a cancer journey, a loved one, dying, or even as part of my position at Blank Children's, had the privilege of starting a student or youth giving program. And this is just kids K through 12 in the metro, who were coming in and, coin drives, lemonade stands, exactly what you think it is,
Yep.
or student council dances, and saying, hey, we want to help give back. We want to give to Blank Children. So we put some structure around it, some goals for giving levels for recognition, and also built a lot of relationships with school systems, etc. Specifically, a student who stands out, Grace McCunn is her name, and she was
Okay.
10 years old. The first time she came into Blank, she'd done a lemonade stand, and they had raised, like $240. So very successful.
That's a lot
Lemonade
of quarters.
as a whole lot. Yeah, I was like, people were throwing some 20s. So
Yeah.
Grace, there is a donor wallet blank, and there are different bricks that are
Yep.
put
I'm
in
familiar
the
with it.
wallet.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
okay.
Yeah.
Yep. And so she had said, as a 10-year-old child, she looked at it and she said, well, how much does it cost to get your name on one of these bricks? I said, oh gosh, well, it's $10,000, and that's the smallest brick on the wall. And he said, but that means a lot of people have been giving for a really long time. Try to explain as you would to a 10 year
Not
old.
not set her up for disappointment. That's right.
Right, absolutely. And she put her hand on her hip and she said, I will be back.
Wow.
And Grace started hot chocolate stands. She started different fundraisers at her school. And then as she transitioned to middle and high school, started a 5K run. And I do not have, as I, again, stepped away from the health system for the last year and a half or so, I believe has cumulatively raised over $125,000.
That is one of the neatest things I've ever heard. I mean,
Yeah,
first of all, that's a couple of really, well, I don't even want to say just the parents. The parents had to be reared correctly. They've
they're
got,
incredible.
they got to have parents and grandparents. They're probably actively involved from a some sort of spiritual approach in life to be giving back. And my wife and I have always said it's not what you have, it's what you give. And we started and I'm not trying to compare my children to her because that is phenomenal. That person is going to make a lot of difference in life, not just because of what she did there. Imagine where she's going is what's going through my
Oh my
mind.
God. That's
Holy
what she's
cow.
a here. And I was like, someday that girl might be signing my paycheck.
Yeah,
So
cure to
just
cancer is sitting in that brain or something. But we started with things like we would go and serve at the men's shelter when we were down in the Carolinas. And we went to a county away from our county. We went to the county that had the worst of the worst from a situation. And we would go every third Thursday and we'd fill the cupboards. We'd go and we'd buy groceries and you'd just buy stuff in bulk. You don't have to spend a lot of money to give a lot of food. You'd get the macaroni and cheese and you'd get applesauce and you'd get pasta dishes and things like that. And for a couple $100, you can fill a pantry and feed a couple hundred meals. I mean, it's amazing what you can do. And then every fourth Sunday, we would go and we would serve lunch on Sundays with the girls. And they both still look at that and talk about those weekends and the people they met. And it just brings it back down to all of us can be in a very bad situation, be it health or monetary, in a heartbeat. Bad things happen to everyone. Not deserved. You don't, it's not karma. It can happen to really, really good people. You talk about how in the world can a 10-year-old have cancer, And that really refines a parent's thinking on what's important. You would do anything to change places with them at that point. To watch a parent go through it. I'm very fortunate. My dad and his brothers had a business, and when that business was sold, they started Taylor House and the hospice system. And so my dad hit me in the back of the head so many times on, I can remember doing the MS Drive, the Jerry Lewis Telethon every year. And I would go around the neighborhood and I would ask for donations. And my dad would drive me down, and Dolph Polium, who was a newscaster here in Des Moines, had the drop off. And I would go down there and I'd have $58 and $47. This is in 1975. And you'd sit there and you'd watch the count up. And Mark Schaefer was a gentleman that was in my class from kindergarten through 6th grade, and he had muscular dystrophy, and he was the poster child for the Jerry Lewis Telethon one year, and I was his helper. He could walk a little bit in kindergarten, 1st grade, and then 2nd grade he went full-time, and I would help his mother and meet them in the back every day and help him get into the wheelchair, and then I helped him on his restroom breaks and take him to the nurse's office for that, and et cetera. And at that point on, somebody else is fighting something today that we don't even know. That one was evident, but it's so good what you've done, and to talk about these young people, because society has become very me-centric, not we-centric. Social media has been very, very challenging for how our society treats others. And I wanted to have you on because I think everyone out there just needs to think about someone else first, and good things are going to come to you from a feeling inside. Your heart spark's going to be there. you don't do it to feel good about yourself, but it's going to bring rewards to you to help others. And I just talked a long time there over the top of you, but it just lots racing through my head on that, on how it's so good that you started with that and these young kids. And man, I'd love to meet Grace. What a wonderful story.
She really is incredible. And I think to your point, it was one of those, I'm like, the kids are all right, right? Like we're doing
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Because collectively too, I mean, Grace was certainly what was really cool about Grace's story too, is that it gave other kids hope that they could do the same thing. And so we had a number of children come in and reach that still to
That's
reach that
awesome.
cumulative level because they wanted to continue. But I think the part that we always try to point out, and I will say this until I'm blue in the face to anyone of any age or capacity, is that I remember somebody came in and they gave, it was like $25 or something and said, I'm sorry, it's not much. And I'm like, I'm going to stop you. And, do not apologize.
Never.
$25 at a children's hospital can buy a new game or toy that could bring someone a whole heck of a lot of joy when they are stuck here and don't want to be, or a great distraction, or it can bring 5 of our nutritious Meals That Matter meals right to patients at Stoddard to take home. And so it's incremental change, right? Like those big, massive, huge, actual, literal oversized checks.
Yep.
Obviously, really big impact, but there is an ability to make an impact for anyone, no matter where you're at. And the other side of it, so in addition to your money or time, I will tell you, I have heard patients over and over again break down in tears because they cannot believe that somebody would want to give to support them, right? Like they are completely overcome with joy during these very emotional or hard times.
Very hard times.
Overwhelmed by how much support is being given to help them or families like them. And so to your point, I've had such a lovely vantage point. One, I've been able to give back and still, help volunteer and give my time and tell it where I can. But having the opportunity to be on the other side of that giving has been a privilege, an absolute privilege.
What a neat how you looked at it, to kind of flip it the other way. And I bet the big oversized checks, that they're great, right? They make a big difference in one swoop. But man, how many people have given the $25 or how many people have given the $50? That probably adds up to a lot more in the grand scheme of things. It's every penny counts. And, you talk about Grace and some of these other kids. I tell my kids all the time, be trendsetters, not followers. And how you are a trendsetter is lean into helping others, lean into your work, be an example of good in all you do. There's no such thing as perfection. That's not any expectation on any of us. But if you can try to make a difference to somebody today through a smile. I did one of the podcasts here, let's see, what was that, 3 weeks ago, was all about appreciation and the power of a thank you. And appreciation is so awesome to feel and to give. And it's a missed component in our psyche, I think, at times. Again, I said that the world got really centered with social media on ourselves, and it's all fake. Right? I mean, all this social media stuff is not real. Go and help somebody. Go into your local community and give your time, your treasure, or your talent, as you say, the 3 T's. I love that. And start to feel the joys of something not about yourself. It's about someone else, and watch them light up, because that's why I'm in leadership, to be quite frank, is individual contributor. I did it. But I'm in leadership because I love high-fiving other people's successes. I love being the coach that watches the light bulb go off in life, in business, and whatever it may be, and celebrating for someone else. And it's just such a great feeling, I think. And there's important needs for individual contributors too. It doesn't mean I'm better than I'm not saying that. But that's why I thrive on coaching and leadership, is because I love to see other people succeed and try to help them any way I can and take them to places that they didn't believe they could get themselves, to watch them surpass that themselves. That's awesome.
Yeah. And I think, it made me think when you said that too, we had talked about how you can, really transition, you say time, treasure, talent, and a lot of times it moves a little bit more towards treasure as you move
Sure.
throughout your career.
Sure.
But I would also say that talent portion. And so when you're talking about your day job, that ability to lead others, provide strategy and direction for an organization, those are skill sets heavily, heavily needed as board positions
Yep.
too. And so there is, no matter where you live, there are a million places to pick from that have a need for what you're able, to give at that stage in the game.
That's awesome, because one of the questions I was going to bring up to you is how do you how would you tell people to start looking locally to do that? Is there any particular way, or it's so needed everywhere to just reach out to the YMCA and say, well, I think back to one of your points you said earlier, was something that you enjoy, pick the 2 or 3 things that are most important to you and lean in. My wife and I also is Alzheimer's. My dad passed from Alzheimer's and cancer. My wife's mother passed from cancer. Those are our heavy where we give treasure to those, plus the hops
Yeah,
for hospice to keep the Taylor House going. We're very active in that every year,
it's a
and
beautiful thing.
oh, it's just I'll tell you, a personal story here. I was living in the Carolinas, and we'd flown back for Hops for Hospice every year, and that's where it's a fundraiser for those that don't know it. Taylor House is a hospice for people's end of life situations to provide comfort both at home and at a bedded facility here in Des Moines. And my uncles and my father. This isn't about me doing it. I didn't set. They're all gone now, but they had a large business here in town and helped get that established. And it brings in a lot of people that give money and big raffles and those types of things. But by coming back every year, it made us realize that giving is very important. So I'm sitting in the Carolinas, and I was still on Facebook at this time. I haven't been for 3.5 years. Best thing I ever did was get off of it. But I had a friend, and she put an announcement out that her mother was fighting cancer, and it wasn't going good, and it looked like hospice was going to be needed, and they were struggling finding some support there. And I personal messaged her and just said, hey, give me a call. Sent her my number, and she called, and I said, hey, I hadn't talked to her in 25 years. She was a dear friend in high school, but life's changed. She went to a different school, got married. I got on down to the Carolinas. Life, it's 25, 30. Yeah, it's about 20, 28 years since I'd seen her. And we catch up for 10 minutes. I'm like, so sorry. And she goes, yeah. And I said, listen, I don't have a lot of play here, but I want you to, and I used my niece Allison at this point, who was helping with philanthropic issues or items at the hospital, and helping with Taylor House and the Hops for Hospice event. I said, what's your mom's name? And I said, I can't pull any favors, but let me see what can happen. And got blind lucky and opened it. They were getting ready to call her and everything to say, we've got a bed and it's all going to be okay. And she got the blue team. And I mean, she has cried in my arms twice, the next 2 times I've seen her, that just the comfort it brought. And I'm like, hey, this isn't about me, and I didn't pull any strings. It was divine intervention for your health. Well, she actually did an interview for the Taylor House on the experience for it, and they actually utilize her now in some of their marketing campaigns. And I couldn't come back 4 years ago, and I get 6 tickets every year. And I said, hey, I want you. And her and 5 girlfriends went, and they just had a ball. So it just made me feel so good. I'm not a bigwig inside the thing, but I could call her and I could comfort her, and it's just people, go out and give your time. It's going to make your heart feel so good. It's going to make you understand how lucky and fortunate we all are. We all face battles and hills that we have to climb in life, but someone somewhere else is really struggling right now, and you can make a difference, I guess, is my overall
Yeah.
message there.
If that has been you, and to your point, we all have had family members with different or various health related issues, or different circumstances in life. And also, I would point out, just as we're having the conversation, that telling your story and sharing that, to your point, you had your friend who shared her mother's story
Yep.
and gave it to meal, is also a really, really meaningful way to give back. And I know a lot of individuals who have found healing in doing that as well, because one of the biggest things, it's funny because now I'm in more of a sales related role, right?
Right.
In a corporate culture. And when they were talking about it, or even during, I think it was during one of the interviews, they said something. And I was like, well, you do realize essentially I've been selling a product. I'm selling impact. I'm selling a story. There is no product. It
Right.
doesn't,
Yeah, this
you know,
hey, I know how to get people to engage and spend money. Trust me.
well, there's no widget, right? Like
Yeah.
there's no widget.
It's an
I think,
intangible, but it's a big expensive widget that I've been driving. Yeah.
but you can't do that without those stories, right?
That's
Like
right.
I said, one of the bigger hurdles that we had in healthcare, and I know this is not unique to now that I'm on the board for the Y. I help volunteer for Above and Beyond Cancer. Gosh, I'm on the board for Community Choice Credit Union, and even just telling member stories, right? Like as
Right.
a sales, uh, it's you need someone. People relate to stories, right, and remember stories, and you need to tell what happens inside of those walls, outside of those walls. And the best way to do it, I can throw stats or infographics out, all day long, and people, it will not resonate as well as someone being vulnerable and brave enough to
To
share.
share. Yeah. I
Yeah.
say that a lot about leaders too, is be vulnerable. So you're not old enough. You're a young lady. To me, I'm getting old here. I actually turned 55 on Saturday, so
Well,
I'm
birthday.
still in. I'm going to be the double nickel. But Coach Dick Vermeil, who was a Super Bowl winning coach and Hall of Famer, in the Hall of Fame, won the Super Bowl with the Rams. He joined on the Leadership Lounge through a relationship I have with him through my real work. And he had to your point that you just said, that those stories make impact and people remember that. He said you can read something, you won't remember it. You can be taught something, not remember, but you never forget experiences and relationships, and that storytelling, and that has impact on you. It has staying power because your emotions got involved. And I just thought it was a really insightful thing. He was talking about his office. He's 86 years old now, and he goes, I'm looking around my office, and I can remember where I was, what was happening, the situation, who was on the other side of the camera taking the picture, because those were experiences going on. And he's very big at giving back as well, and just a neat guy. Give that one a listen at some point, but neat man. So
Oh
so
yeah.
tell us a little bit about, and then I know we're coming up on the time period here, but so has the transition to an account executive and leading business relationships, how has that gone for you?
It's been great. I said, thankfully, I am just nerdy enough to enjoy this type of transition.
Yep.
Candidly, I mean, I went from a decade plus long career in healthcare. I went to grad school at Drake to get a master's in public administration. So really to be a healthcare leader, so different that I feel like I got a lot of energy just from learning something new, using my brain in a different way, learning a different culture, organizational culture, right? And it has been PS2. So we initially started out specializing in payment systems for credit unions, which is where the acronym was based, but now do a lot more to support from a fintech standpoint and financial, like really wraparound services for credit unions and community banks. But they have done just an incredible job of building culture and building culture. They have a remote workforce. And so even just to see that and gain some perspective from that point of view has been educational in its own right. So it's been really good. It's been a good
That's
move. It was
awesome.
a big jump, but a really good move. And as since we're talking about giving back, I will say it has given me more emotional bandwidth um, to give back in a volunteer capacity. I think working in nonprofit for such a long period of time, I still was very motivated to serve on different boards or help volunteer, but found myself doing it honestly in a very lukewarm capacity. And I think it's because I was giving a lot
You were
of
burnt
that
out. You were burnt out.
capacity, yeah, for my day job.
Yeah.
And there was not as much left to give. The tank was
The
very,
tank
very
was empty.
empty.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that also just is from a self-reflection standpoint has been nice. And today, for example, this week has been it's been a 4-day week because of the holiday, but gosh, it's been a long one. I got a text from my managing VP this morning, and this is not this has not been your week. And I'm like, I am well aware, sir.
You don't need to tell me nothing. Oh, that's
Oh my God,
funny.
I died. But I today then it was one of those days you're like, I do not have time to your point, eat lunch, grab water, walk
Yeah.
the dog. But I had already volunteered, signed up to volunteer for the YMCA. We're doing social emotional learning assessments for some of their before and after schools
Yeah.
programs at underserved elementary schools in Des Moines.
That's
And I signed
awesome.
up, and it was like, oh, you know what I mean? Where you're like, do I really need to take 2 hours like out of this week that's been going just spiraling? And the answer is yes, because I got up, walked away, and was like, this is a commitment I've made, right? Like I'm not going to back out of it.
You're an accountable
And
person. You're accountable to it. That's great.
it was the best. I mean, it's certainly been the best part of my whole day and potentially whole week based on how things are going.
Besides the
So
doctor leadership discussion, you're saying, right?
absolutely, yes,
Yeah,
yes,
distant
yes, yes,
sec.
yes.
Okay, just making sure
Present
I understood
company,
that.
present company included. Yeah.
Well,
Uh,
thanks for sticking with the time frame tonight because you could have easily said, "Hey, man, maybe next
no,
time."
we are good. Is your house built on an Indian burial ground?
That's funny.
So it was so funny. But it was a pause point. It was that forced pause point where I got to get up, walk away, and do something that just felt great.
That's wonderful.
And I was like, this is why. This is why we do this. And I needed it. I absolutely needed it. I think I came back and was able to, put some things in perspective. And I think 9 times out of 10, and now I can say this because I no longer work in healthcare, um, you know, this is probably going to sound morbid, but I was like, no one's dying on the table, right?
Yeah,
Like I think
I get
we
it
can,
though. Yep,
it's fixable, right?
that's
Like
right.
it's important. Hey, we work with people's money. Like that's next to your health. That is certainly the most important thing, or some people may have that reverse, but
It makes the world go
I
round for sure. Yep.
yeah, it's incredibly important. But I was like, there are few things that happen that cannot be fixed. And so I think having that perspective is good. And honestly, I don't know if this is helpful. A lot of people are like, I'm like, I'm replaceable.
That's
Like
right. Everybody is. My
everyone is. I'm like, I think I do. I think I provide a lot of value. Absolutely. Do I, care? Am I moving the needle? X, Y, and Z? Yes, yes, yes. Could I leave tomorrow and they would have my position filled within 3 months? Probably.
mhm.
And so, same with the health system, same with the health system CEO, right? Like you see changes happen. And
That's right.
so I think that perspective also is incredibly helpful in being like, I'm just not that important.
Well, and I'll tell you, in society, no political affiliation needed here. Both of them are guilty of it. I'm so tired of everything is the end of the world. It's the end of
Yeah.
democracy. It's the end of the planet. It's this dark place that
Chicken
puts,
littling.
yeah, and
We call it
it's
chicken littling.
exactly right. And as humans, we need some sunshine, and we need optimism, not pessimism right now. Not being unrealistic with it, but we need some sunshine in this world, and that's what having you on is helping. And the stories you've told are just so inspiring to me. And what I'm trying to do with the show itself is to let people know that first of all, you're accountable for your outcomes, and give
Yeah.
back when you have these successes happen, because all of us are susceptible to good things and bad things. I'm replaceable. I work for a multi-billion-dollar organization. I've been there in leadership for going on, well, almost, it'll be 28 years this year in leadership roles. And I think
Yeah.
I've got great fellowship and all that. But when I retire or when they retire me, whatever happens, that company's going to go on because it has to for all the other team members, right? I mean, it's not that you weren't. I hope I was inspiring. I hope I'm remembered. I hope I have a legacy that is, well, everybody enjoyed, what I did. I had to make some tough decisions, but I think I brought joy and some positive outcome to it. But all of us are replaceable, and it's not to be morbid, but nobody's dying here, and you're right. And there's certain aspects that of healthcare where that isn't the case, but in everybody's day in and day out life, just don't take yourself too damn seriously, and don't
Mhm.
think that the world's ending for little things. Don't burn up emotions on uncontrollables in the grand scheme of
Yeah.
things, because you got to burn enough emotions on your controllables to get through this thing called life.
Well, and control, really
That's
what we
right.
can put quotes to is a bit of a illusion, um, in its own right. So
That's right.
it's at a little level further. It's really,
Well,
um,
I love that it's going well, and I know we're coming up on time here, so I do want to just make one last comment to you. It's great to have you on because you're living proof that just because you don't work in a philanthropically dedicated role any longer, you're still giving. You're active in multiple boards. You're helping with underserved and underprivileged young kids, which is outstanding. And I challenge everybody out there to just look around and say, where can I give? Start with an hour to give and see if it feels good, and find something that trips your trigger, for lack of a better statement, and then try a couple hours. And if your parents, get your kids involved early, because the village is going to need leaders for the community needs long after I'm gone, right? We owe it to the next generations to create this loving and caring society that we want to live within. We got to work hard to do it, but it'll feel so good. And everybody out there, just lean in to your professional lives, your personal lives, and now your community lives. And the reason I'm asking that of you is you're all awesome. Keep that shit up.